Hey, we're live. There we go. Sorry, there's a lot going on today. We
just gonna say, did we have another breaking news incident right before we were about to record a podcast there that we needed to talk about?
Fortunately, we did not. But yeah, we were gonna podcast at like 1:30. It's Friday. Whenever people are listening to this, it's 1:30 on a Friday. So of course, a Friday news dump. The Chicago Bulls specifically are always very good at that, and they announced the signing of Ayo Dosunmu to a 3-year, $21 million deal, which is surprising. We could definitely comment a little bit on that in a second, but before we do, I just want to say welcome back to everybody. This is the second episode of our revamped podcast here. Matt, how do you feel about the first one? What was your scouting report on our first episode?
I thought we did pretty well. We went into that podcast episode planning on like 45 minutes to an hour, and I think we went like an hour and a half. I think you probably could have gone an hour and a half more of you talking about your summer league experience. But I had a fun time, and I'm now that we're July 21st here, this is like the dead season of just about every sport. I'm just looking forward to when we get like actual storylines given to us to talk about. And thankfully, the Bulls provided us with a couple of those this week, and one of those a few minutes before we pressed record here. But like I just want more stuff to start happening now. Like I'm sick of the off season with every sport already.
I know. Well, we definitely started this during the dog days of the summer, but that's for us to get our feet wet. So we're just we're vets, we're pros by the time we're good locker room guys by the time the real season gets going. And yeah, so today's show, we're just gonna, and I think this is gonna become pretty common of what we get each week up until the season. We're going to start with a little bit of bullet points that we missed since the last show throughout the last week. The bullet points, some news. Hasn't been a ton of stuff, obviously, but there's a couple things that we could touch on. And then after that, we'll do a little bit of talk about Team USA. The FIBA World Cup is going to start real soon, and the Team USA roster has basically been finalized. They're adding some players to the select team for them to practice against in Las Vegas. So we have that to just touch on a little bit so everyone's aware of who's going to be playing in August. And then after that, I think we're going to talk about the Eastern Conference teams with the most to prove. Now that free agency is kind of over, we have a good idea of what most East teams will look like. Maybe not with a team like Miami or with even Brooklyn. That those are the two that have been heavily linked to Damian Lillard. But otherwise, pretty good feeling for the East, I would say, so far. And we could talk about which teams have the most to prove. So that's a good show. We're gonna pack it all in. For the fact that there's nothing going on, I think that's solid content, Matt. I don't know about you. And then I can give a rundown at the end about my first basketball game. I joined a basketball league. It's not my first ever basketball game, to be clear, but I rejoined a rec league. Had our first game. Bunch of people I don't know. We're all newbies thrown on one team. We had our first game last night, or 2 nights ago. So maybe at the end of the show, I'll give some feedback on how that went for me. But let's start.
Yeah, I like how you threw into the group Slack channel. Like, yeah, I put up a 3 early just to kind of show them what I'm about.
I had to. I'll talk about it at the end. I didn't play a great game by any means, but I think I at least proved a little bit of myself early on. So to start, with some weekly bullet points here, just to touch on what's happened since we've last spoke. I was at Summer League, the first podcast that we recorded a little over a week ago, and I was able to see a lot of fun young players, a lot of fun teams, but that has now all wrapped up. The Cavaliers played the Rockets in the final game of Summer League, the championship game, and the Cavaliers ended up walking away with the Summer League ring. So in case you missed that,
I can't believe they actually get rings.
That's basically the only reason I put this on the list, because I think it's ridiculous that there's I guess you need some incentive, but I don't know who's going to be sporting a ring in the locker room. If you're like a 10-year vet and your rookie walks in with a Summer League ring, my guess is that that rookie's going to be picking up the Chipotle for the next like 10 weeks for everybody, because that's ridiculous.
I feel like the incentive is like make a basketball team, like play good enough to make an NBA basketball team.
Okay, that's a good point.
Summer League basketball isn't necessarily about winning games. Like
that's a very good point.
It's about playing well enough to make a team.
Yeah, the incentive is definitely to prove that you can play in the NBA and make millions of dollars. So Yeah, but the Cavs, they won. They proved to look pretty good. Isaiah Mobley, Evan Mobley's brother, put up points in that game. I think he led the way with maybe, I think it was 28 points. Sam Merrill, sharpshooter, he ended up second leading scorer. Both those guys. I was actually very surprised with Isaiah Mobley's performance, just because his brother obviously is such a bigger name prospect. But Isaiah has some of those similar attributes, and he definitely looked like somebody who should at least earn a chance, maybe on a rebuilding team. I mean, he's signed with the Cavs, but just to get a chance to show a little bit more of what he can do. And then Merrill is somebody who I don't believe is signed anywhere right now, and reminded everyone of his 3-point stroke. And then Amani Bates, who the Cavaliers drafted. Famous prospect who was first at Memphis and ended up transferring to Eastern Michigan. And he had a strong game as well, and helps the Cavaliers win the Summer League championship. So overall, I think the Summer League championship is always silly, but those are
when Denzel Valentine puts the Bulls on his shoulders and carries them to a Summer League championship. That's when it matters. It's the only thing that matters.
Of course, yeah. But yeah, so the Summer League is all finally over. The Cavaliers are riding high. I always think the ring is funny. The social media stuff is always funny. Like they're posting the next morning, waking up as champs or whatever. Okay, good for you guys.
Calm down, guys.
Yeah, calm down a little bit.
It's probably a really fun night in Vegas for those guys, the Cavs guys that win, and then they have a reason to fake go out.
And then they meet, they at least meet a couple of people out at the nightclub who don't understand sports at all and think that they just won the actual NBA championship. I'm sure that happens. I'm sure that's a fun vibe. Okay, next bullet point here. Joel Embiid. I don't know who may have seen this. This is the kind of offseason slop that we get, but Joel Embiid was said in an interview earlier last week that he was interested in, well, what was the exact quote? I'm going to see if I can pull this up.
Either way, he said like he wants to win a title, like hopefully in Philly, but like if it's not in Philly, that's fine too. Like,
yes,
didn't really like demand a trade, or like he said he was cool in Philly, but also like, yeah, if they want to move me, like that's cool too. Like I'll also take that. Like either way is fine, just as long as I win one. So that's the door is open there for Joe, especially in Philly with how volatile that franchise can be at times. Like if things don't go well again, like that door is wide open in my opinion with those comments, and I think that means Joel Embiid knows that as well.
Right. I think the big thing with Embiid is just with the 76ers repeatedly struggling to get over that hump, being a second round exit kind of waiting to happen. Not only has Embiid had to deal with Ben Simmons, but now he has to deal with James Harden leaving. And that kind of stuff can wear on you, and it can make you question your organization as well. And obviously we all know Embiid has continued to play at a ridiculously high level, just coming off the MVP. He's 100% somebody who should be in the mix for the title every single year. And he's probably just not going to sit there and for many more years and continue on this path of, it's a good team, but I guess you can call it playoff mediocrity, somebody that you never fully feel confident about them being able to go all the way. So yes, he made a comment about how he just wants to win and he's willing to win anywhere. And then, of course, shortly after that, there's clarification that he wants to win in Philly. He wants to be there. But I think the overarching premise is he's one of the names that everyone's going to be keeping an eye on over the next, season, over the next 2 seasons, because in terms of any movable superstar, I think right now, or the next big superstar that can ask out, I feel like he's pretty high on the list. And, Luka Doncic maybe is another player that people are going to continue to keep an eye on. It's just, I think there's been even less indications that he would do that, whereas Embiid, has had random kind of sketchy comments like this that make you go, oh, could he actually think about playing somewhere else? So that happened, and that's a perfect off-season storyline. Nobody will think about it in a couple of weeks when they're gearing up for their season again. After that, the other piece of news, no progress. This news is that there's been no news. Of course, there's been no progress on the James Harden and Damian Lillard situation. Both teams appear prepared to play hardball. Lillard, and I think if one was going to be traded, I would see Lillard being traded maybe before Harden, just because Daryl Morey of the Philadelphia 76ers has shown in the past that he is willing to kind of really drag things out and just wait for the proper return. We haven't seen Joe Cronin with the Portland do this yet. So maybe he'll take a similar mantra. But really, for two big names, there's been very little traction over the last couple of weeks. And it's hard to say, especially for a player like Damian Lillard, who's going to have the assets that Portland's going to want in return. It's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. The last little two bits of news over the past week both have to do with the Chicago Bulls. So close to home for Matt and I. Christian Wood was connected to both the Bulls and the Miami Heat. He's one of the best remaining free agents on the market. And the news kind of there was just that the Bulls might be willing to throw him a contract with their disabled player exception that they got for Lonzo Ball, which is worth about $10.2 million. And the Los Angeles Lakers are a team that have been interested in Wood, but they can only offer the minimum. So the thought process there has been, hey, maybe the Bulls just say, we're going to go into the luxury tax. Here's your $10 million. That's the big reason that I question the report, just because I don't think that the Chicago Bulls would be willing to go into the luxury tax to add Wood, especially when we consider they've already added Torrey Craig, who's expected to play some minutes at power forward. So the last thing with the Bulls was the Ayo Dosunmu signing, I think, is the thing that I'll bring up for now. We just got that news before we were going to hop on. Ayo Dosunmu, probably after Wood, I would say, was the best name on the market just because he's a 23-year-old guard. He's somebody who's played, I believe, 77 games his first year, 80 games last year, and very reliable, a lot of experience for somebody who, is as young as he is. And while there's definitely questions about his offensive game, his off-ball abilities, he's proven to be a good defender early on, and overall has the makings of a rotational role player in the NBA. And I don't think most would deny that. So the market wasn't necessarily there for him, but the Bulls get him back on a 3-year, $21 million deal. And I think it's good for both parties. Dosunmu gets a pretty nice package he gets long-term security that I'm sure he was looking for. And as for Chicago, they keep a young asset and they don't have many of them. So it's a little bit of an overpay, maybe, considering the competition.
That was my first thought when I saw 3 for 21 and 7 per. I thought that was. I know he's been a reliable player, but he's really shown, at least in terms of being a scorer, not a ton of improvement from last year. I know he plays pretty solid defense and he's good, rotational second unit guy. But now you have Javon Carter, who's probably the starting point guard, we think, or at least one of two, lead guards. The other one being Kobe White. $7 million for kind of the third point guard on the depth chart, who I know he's young and you like having young assets that you can also include in trades if you have to balance out money and all that. 3 years for seven per seemed like a lot for me for a guy that started out really hot in his Bulls career and I think has kind of leveled off.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think that there's no question that last season he plateaued a bit, and I think there are real concerns about if his 3-point shot can be consistent, because if it's not, it's going to be hard for him to kind of stay on the floor. But I do think that, I don't know, $7 million today's NBA isn't too much for me to worry about. I also think that we got to I always try to be a little bit hesitant to react too much to these deals just right off the bat, because, the third year, for all we know, could be a team option, or it could be a non-guaranteed third year. So
true.
If that's the case, then the deal is probably going to look a lot better for the Bulls. But I mean, if it is fully guaranteed, there's 100% going to be questions there. I will say, though, that it's good. I think, you kind of mentioned it. It's good to have those, those middle tier contracts. This gives them one at $7 million that they could maybe package next year, or they could kind of easily trade. I'm sure other teams would be fine taking, a player like Dosunmu back in if there was any sort of package that included him. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's fine overall. I definitely understand if people find it to be a bit of an overpay at first, but I don't know. I just think it was more important for them to just keep him in the building, and they can figure out the rest later. The rotation obviously doesn't have a lot of room for him, but I'd rather keep a young asset than let somebody like him walk. They've gone through these issues. They've been two-way players, but the Bulls have seen issues with Max Strus leaving in the past, him going to become, a rotation player. And there's another name that I can't remember right now, but they've had problems in the past with not prioritizing some of these guys and them going on to play pretty decent basketball. So we'll see how that ends up for them. But that would be the news over the last week. Not a lot. Rattled through it fast, but
we're in the down period, people.
Yeah,
we're in the down period here.
But now you're caught up. In case you were wondering. Let's move on to talking about Team USA. This will be another kind of quick hitter, but I think it's important to touch on just because for people who are desperate to watch some basketball, it'll come your way before the training camp and preseason hoops start up in early October. Team USA, the FIBA World Cup begins next month in August. It's still roughly a month away. It'll be late August, but they'll kind of start playing some exhibition games, one in Las Vegas, I believe, and then they'll head overseas to Europe and play a couple of exhibition games before they end up in the Philippines for the full-on competition. So it's a big deal this time around, just because in 2019, the Team USA ended up losing to Argentina, was it? I got to pull up my notes.
Sounds about right. I feel like that's a team they usually end up losing to in these times.
Yeah, that's historically that it has happened. But in 2019, they ended up coming in 7th place. Very awful finish, especially considering I believe they won the previous 2 FIBA World Cups. So there was a young Jason Tatum on that 2019 team. There was a young Donovan Mitchell. And it's kind of become popular, especially with the FIBA World Cup, to have younger rosters. So they're definitely following that trend yet again this time around, where the 12-man unit for the upcoming FIBA World Cup is headlined by Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton. One of the oldest players on there would be Bobby Portis, who's just kind of a role guy.
Love that he's on there.
Yeah, I like that he's on there too. I think he definitely will bring a level of physicality that you need against a lot of international teams. Brandon Ingram's on there, Paolo Banchero, Mikal Bridges, Jaren Jackson Jr. defending the Defensive Player of the Year from this past season. Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Walker Kessler, Cam Johnson, and Austin Reeves. So I believe that's the full 12-man unit that they will take over to the Philippines. All things considered, it sounds like a good team on paper, but so did the 2019 team with,
I love how Austin Reeves just kind of played himself into this with a really good, just had one really good half of the season and kind of became the go-to scorer on the Lakers when they really needed one outside of LeBron, obviously. And I feel like that's why these kind of tournaments are here, but it has to be tough for this Team USA and the ones that go to the FIBA World Cup. You're still Team USA basketball, and Americans still expect you to go ahead and win no matter what, or cruise through these things easily. It's kind of like a tough, almost no-win situation. If you go and win, and it's oh great, congrats, you did what you should, or they finished 7th place like they did last time around, and it's us just oh man, this team's terrible. What's wrong with all these players? They're not good. But I like this roster. Jalen Brunson had as good of a playoffs as just about anybody not named Jimmy Butler last year. I mean, he got the Knicks into the second round, carried him out of the first round. Tyrese Halliburton's really kind of emerging as a superstar. And I know you were talking about how previously they had the young Jason Tatum, the young Donovan Mitchell. They got a couple guys who are establishing themselves as not superstars in the NBA, but that next level just below it, that next tier of star, Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson, Jaren Jackson Jr. So it's a fun roster. And honestly, when I first saw it, I was kind of slightly impressed. I was kind of expecting a little bit lesser of a roster than the one I put out.
Sure. I mean, especially getting names getting Ingram is a big get.
For them. That's a big deal.
Getting Anthony Edwards is a big get. I mean, the fact that, and it's always encouraging that these younger guys do want to come and participate, because hopefully, and maybe next time around they decide they had such a good time, they come back. So overall, going on the younger side is it makes sense. The only thing that concerns me is that a lot of these international teams that you'll see once things starts up aren't necessarily the youngest. No, I pulled.
They're
it up.
grown men.
Right. So I just pulled it up. It wasn't Argentina. It was France that the final game that they played against. Team USA played against in 2019. They lost by 10 in that game. I do remember watching that one now that I see the box score in front of me. That had Evan Fournier. It had Rudy Gobert. Before that, they lost to Serbia which had like Bogdanovic, Jokic. Like there's not only are there a lot of very good international teams, but also the fact that they're going to be bringing out, like, the team that did end up winning it all was Spain. That was led by Ricky Rubio, an old Ricky Rubio. So there's going to be veterans. There's going to be guys who are great players overseas, guys who are part of, the Euro League, who are Euro League standouts. They're going to be competing in this, and they see this as an opportunity to take down, a juggernaut in Team USA.
They don't care that it's not LeBron and
no
whoever. Like they see it's Team USA, and that's a target on their backs. And I feel like too, these like Spain, Serbia, whatever, like are players that play together a lot throughout the year, whether it's in the EuroLeague or like in more international games like that. And then it's like, oh, you guys are really good together. Serbia, here's also Nikola Jokic to play on your team. Or Spain, now we're going to give you Ricky Rubio to go with the team that already plays really well together, knows each other very, very well. So it is a tough task for Team USA, because you come together almost like an all-star team that really does need that time to make chemistry together instantly, and it's not something you can just build quickly like these European or other teams that are playing in half.
Yeah, no, that's actually it's a very good point, because the continuity of the rosters overseas, like you said, there's a lot more international.
Been playing together forever.
Yeah, and they just stay put. I mean, like guys that played in the last, I haven't gone and double checked, but this happens often in the Olympics, and it happens also in the FIBA World Cup. It's just these are guys that have played it multiple times before. And, guys on this roster, there's nobody on this roster that was on the FIBA World Cup roster from 2019. As far as I'm looking at it, I don't believe there was. And so you're right. It's like an all-star team getting together. The one thing I'll say that I do like about this group, even more than like a Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum duo, like, and what that roster in 2019 looked like, I feel like there's more balance here. I think they did a good job.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of conversations that go on behind the scenes of organizing this roster. We can go all the way back to not including Isaiah Thomas on Team USA. Like there's a lot of the players talk, but they understand that team camaraderie and the way that they can actually, play together on the court is a big deal. So there's a lot of behind the scenes talk that goes into it. And I think having a guy like Halliburton to lead the way at point guard, extremely unselfish, probably, one of the most talented playmakers in the league. The fact that he's there at point guard is great. Paolo Banchero, more of a traditional four, having him there is fun. Anthony Edwards, a score first guy. Brandon Ingram, kind of also score first, but it can do a little bit of everything. Good long defender as well. Mikal Bridges, he was probably just going to be while at Brooklyn, we saw what he can do offensively. We know that he's an all NBA caliber defender. So you have him alongside a guy like Josh Hart guarding the wing. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be focused primarily on defense. You got shooters in Cam Johnson. Austin Reeves can hit some shots for you. Bobby Portis is a good stretch big. So I actually like the balance a lot of this roster. I do worry a little bit about lack of traditional size against some of these teams, because the international teams, they just like to muck it up. They play, the spacing overseas is not what it is in the US, which can throw off a lot of players, especially younger players. And there's going to be a lot of work that's done in the paint. So we're just it'll be interesting to see how this team can respond. But I like the balance of it on paper. The lack of size is a little bit scary. But other than that, I do feel like I like what this team could potentially do when compared to the 2019 group.
Yeah, I'm with you. When do I know? I'm sorry, I know you mentioned. When do they start playing their exhibitions?
I believe the first one is on August 7th.
Okay.
I'm going to look it up right now, though. So for anyone listening, if you want to just take out your calendar and mark it immediately. So their first actual game of the tournament is on August 26th against New Zealand, and then they play Greece, which could be Giannis. He did have an offseason knee surgery, so it's unclear if he's going to participate, but I believe he is on Greece's preliminary roster. Other than that, though, schedule-wise, I think their first game is going to be in Las Vegas. I have the schedule right here. I'm pulling it up. Yeah, the 7th in Las Vegas against Puerto Rico. Then they will travel to Spain for a couple of games. They'll play Slovenia, they'll play Spain, and they'll play Greece in an exhibition game. And I think they might have one more on the list before that. So they'll have plenty of exhibition games in there. Honestly, it's easy to forget like how many games they actually play when you include the expedition in the FIBA World Cup, because there's all the group play stuff too. So in a short amount of time,
basketball.
Yeah, in a short amount of time, they play a lot of games. But I love when it's on, because it's basically a races a month where you normally wouldn't have any basketball, where you can at least root for Team USA, but then you can at least watch a lot of NBA stars.
We're at the point of the year where we're just looking for something, and it gives us something.
And there's plenty of NBA stars who, play for the teams overseas. Like Team Canada this year is also stacked. They have like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have Jamal Murray. RJ Barrett, I believe, might be playing. So that's
I don't think I knew Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was Canadian. I think I just learned that today.
So Team Canada is like scary. It's a team to watch out for. They've never been really in the mix, but they've added some legit NBA guys over the past handful of years, and they're coming. They're coming for the U.S. Watch the border. Okay, so Bullets done. Team USA done. I think
Eastern Conference?
We should move on, yes, to talking about the teams with the most to prove in the Eastern Conference. So I just think this is we can do Western Conference next week, but I just think that this is one of those things that, like I said at the beginning, now that rosters are kind of set, there's a couple more veteran minimum guys that'll sign, maybe a trade or two, but for the most part, we kind of know what teams are going to look like now heading into next year. And I think there's some teams that just clearly, next time or this time next year, we could be looking at them really shaking things up, blowing it up if things don't go according to plan. So I'll let you start. Is there a team that kind of jumps out to you right away as somebody in the East that you're like, this group right here, they have a lot to prove this year?
Yeah, this is easy. It's very easy. It's in our own backyard. It's the Chicago Bulls. Like the front office, the roster, just about everything everyone has someone to prove. The roster, the front office has essentially said the only thing wrong with our roster is that Lonzo Ball has been hurt and hasn't panned out. So they go out and get Lonzo Ball light in Javon Carter. I know they get Torrey Craig to kind of help as a 3-and-D, but still, I don't think anyone thinks that's going to be a major piece. And then essentially they just kind of bring everyone back and they say, we're going to run it back. And there was some flirting with Zach trade talks, but they extend Vooch and they're bringing back the same group. And I know they keep riding on, we were the 1 seed when Lonzo got hurt, or up until a point. And then, then you became the 6th seed, and then you lost in the first round, and then you lost in the play-in. Like, I think this group has something to prove. I think the front office has something to prove. I think Zach LaVine started to prove something towards the end of last year. And then against the Heat, when they really needed it the most, kind of became a no-show. So I think I know he got paid, so maybe he doesn't in his own mind in terms of financially has anything to prove, but in terms of his reputation, he has something to prove. Like every single person on that roster, in my opinion, has something to prove because the front office is backing them. They're backing their work. They're not backing down and selling, and they haven't done really anything outside of winning one playoff game against Milwaukee because DeMar scored like 45. That's it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think
I don't mean to take the layup from you, but I think that's as you look in the Eastern Conference, I think that's number one.
Hey, I hit you with the down court feed. You laid it up easy.
You still have to hit the layup. You still got to hit them.
No, that's you. Yeah, if you have it, take it. You're right.
How many wide open threes did the Bulls get this year in transition that they just didn't bury? I just tried to bury one.
Yeah, exactly. So I respect the shot attempt. No, yeah, that's the right pick right off the bat. They double down on this core, which most people think was a dumb idea, and I am one of those people. I don't really understand the decision. You gave Vucevic a new 3-year deal. That seemed to be, that was at least a part of it that I always was kind of on board with, because I regardless of anything, and anyone who listens to this podcast consistently moving forward will hear me reiterate this point. I just don't like it losing an asset for nothing. That's why, I didn't like the idea of Ayo Dosunmu potentially being gone this summer. Same thing even with Vucevic. The idea of the trade way or countering or factoring in to them re-signing them, I think is ridiculous. That's a sunk cost at that point. But separate of that is the idea of not wanting to lose a player for nothing. And Vucevic, regardless of what you think about his fit in Chicago, is still one of the best centers in the NBA. He's still, an 18 and 11 guy every single night. And he'll continue to be that way, I think, for a couple of years or through the bulk of his this new 3-year deal. So at the end of the day, I respected that move. But what it did was, reiterate to everybody around the league that we're not going to do what you think we should do and take a step back and just double down around this core. And the reason, though, I think this is an easy layup and why they have the most to prove this upcoming season is not only because they doubled down, but because they kind of only have one season left to potentially, do something here because DeMar DeRozan is up for a new deal. And unless in the next couple of weeks we get some sort of extension that no one is expecting, he'll be a free agent next year. And he's earned a new payday, as even though he's getting older, he's played miraculously the past couple of seasons. And he's somebody that has earned every bit of, whatever his next contract's going to look like. And it doesn't seem like that's going to come from the Bulls. So next summer, they're going to be in a new situation where I can't hear you.
I'm muted. I accidentally hit mute there. I'm glad you said that it's not going to be here because I love DeMar. He's been really good here and really fun to watch. And by all accounts, very good in the locker room, great with the young guys. Like, he's a great leader. He's going to be 34 years old, I believe it is, when he signs whatever his next extension is. The Bulls cannot give him 4 years at the max. You can't.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get the max for what it's worth, but I mean, he's going to get a good chunk of money
or whatever. You can't give him $30 million a year over 4. We just can't keep doing this.
Yeah, so I think that just puts a time limit on things as is. But with Zach LaVine too, you gotta prove that even with all these rumors. Has been a whole thing, but it's the right choice. It's a team that is doubling down on something that has been a very inconsistent product over the past 2 years, a very underwhelming product, and they are suggesting they see something that everybody observing and a lot of people around the league do not see. And we'll see if they prove right. I don't know what they would have to do to prove themselves right this season.
They'd have to at least win a playoff series.
That seems
you got to win a playoff series, and then if you get Milwaukee in the second round or Boston in the second round, you have to be competitive. I'm realistic. The chances of the Bulls going on a Miami Heat run to the NBA Finals are very, very slim to none. But I got to see something, especially from Zach LaVine in a playoff series that wins them a playoff series and keeps them in one against Boston. I don't need him to be Jimmy Butler of last playoffs, but I need him to go be the best player in a series. And I know that Milwaukee, his knee was bugging him and he was hurt, and that's fine. And maybe that, but it just always kind of seems like there's an excuse or a reason why Zach is not performing up to peak level. And I need those to come to an end, because when he was at his best for that month and a half stretch last year, he was unbelievable. I mean, I was doing the Bulls the game night previews and weekly previews, and I kept writing about you. I feel had a different post about him every other day because he was doing something new or something a Bull hadn't done in a while. That's the guy we need to see. And I'm changing my answer almost now. So I would like to see them get to the playoffs, win a series, but mainly I want to see Zach be the guy that's worth building around in order for them to be proven right. That's
why I think they are the team that at least one of them with the most to prove, because there's things they have to prove in different areas. They have to prove that sticking with the entire core was correct. They have to prove that, signing Vucevic was the right way to go. They have to prove that signing Zach to the max contract was the right way to go. And I do agree. I think winning just one playoff series does at least prove for 1 year. Yeah, the decision we made last summer was the right one, because this is an organization that hasn't won a playoff series since 2014-15. So, that would at least do the job. Okay. Next
you
team.
Need one.
Enough
Bulls. Enough Bulls. I don't want to get too fired up here.
Yeah, I don't want to get too sad. The next team with the most to prove. It's funny. I do think this is a tough conversation just because there's a lot of middling teams in the league. But I want to see which one I want to go with here before I throw it back to you. Let's see. I'm going to go with, why don't we go with kind of something we touched on earlier with Philly. The 76ers definitely have a lot to prove because of the fact that Joel Embiid said kind of what he said recently. We were talking about it earlier. Mm-hmm. He's a player that, if you're going to try to rank the big name stars, the MVP caliber players who could demand a trade next, he's right near the top. And what Philly needs to prove is, okay, we traded Ben Simmons when he wanted out for James Harden. Now the player that we traded him for wants out. What can we get for James Harden to make sure that we're staying competitive? And how can we make sure we get out of this loop of being a team that nobody in the playoffs really takes too seriously? They're, I think, a shoe-in usually to win that first round just because they're sitting in the top 4 in the Eastern Conference. But nobody after that is really convinced that they're going to be able to pull this off. And I think winning around Embiid at a higher level. Jokic might be able to do it, but Jokic is a completely different player because of the fact that he is the passer, that he is the facilitator. Embiid's a type of player who you play through him in the post. Come playoff time, I mean, you do have to have that co-star because double teams are going to fly in Embiid, and as well as he can be at handling those at times, he's just not the playmaker that Jokic is, and doesn't have the court vision that he does. So, I just think for Philly, there's a clock ticking now, especially with the James Harden thing not working out. That was kind of, I think, what everyone assumed initially. Okay, they get Harden. He's Daryl Morey's guy, and Harden's going to sign on long term, and it'll be a Harden and Embiid duo trying to compete for some sort of championship. That's not the case anymore. So we've seen over and over again, you need the 2 stars, at least in this league, to, repeatedly. I mean, I for the most part, you need at least 2 stars. That's just, you can look at a team like Milwaukee, I guess, and second best player on that championship team was Middleton or Holiday, and they might not be at that level, but I don't even know who a Middleton or Holiday would be on Philly right now if Harden leaves. You have Maxey, I guess Maxey, but that's
got to be the guy. Like that for me is that obviously Philly has a lot to prove. I think it's a good answer. Like that to me is the guy that needs to be like, he needs to be the Jamal Murray of Denver. Like he needs to take that next step and kind of, no one's going to call Jamal Murray a true, 1A, 1B superstar with Jokic. He needs to, he became clearly the number 2 on that roster. And then I think that roster luckily was also built very well, had a whole bunch of number 3s. Like that needs to be Tyrese Maxey because it wasn't James Harden. It was never going to be James Harden. Daryl Morey picked up James Harden because that's his guy and thought maybe he could, get something out of Ben Simmons and maybe, recover the last bit of whatever he had left. He clearly doesn't really have much left. You need to figure out turning him into 2 or 3 assets / role players that aren't just throwaway guys that, make an actual impact on the team and kind of spread out because you're not getting a true star back. And I don't think this pipe dream
That's
of
what they want, but it's probably not happening. Yeah.
I don't think this pipe dream of turning James Harden and, sprinkling some fairy dust on a deal and turning it into Zach LaVine is going to really work out either. So I think your best route is to try and turn Harden into 2 or 3 pieces that actually can make a difference on the floor. And I guess put all your eggs into the Tyrese Maxey bucket and kind of hope he takes the next step because he's shown flashes of being a really good basketball player. I know he's killed the Bulls. So maybe that's kind of your best course of action here. And then you hope Embiid stays healthy, and which I know is a big hope because that doesn't really happen. But I don't know. It starts with getting rid of Harden for a couple pieces, and then I think it just has to be Maxey being the guy taking the next step.
Right. Yeah. And like what you bring up with Jamal Murray, or even me bringing up with the Bucks situation, even though they might not be the 1A, 1B, like a Middleton or a Holiday, Jamal Murray, these guys aren't by themselves taking you, very far into the playoffs by any means, but they know how to play with the superstar remarkably well. And, that's something that it seems like Philly believes that Maxey's going to be able to do with Embiid, but that's what we haven't yet seen really in Philly. Simmons and Embiid was always a contentious duo. This Harden and Embiid situation, it looked nice right off the bat, but it's another thing that's been inconsistent. So the question is, who can you put next to Embiid, even if it isn't a Harden level talent, even if it isn't, even Simmons level talent, but just somebody who is going to be maybe a couple time all-star, but he's the type of guy that just fits so well next to him. And the two of them have that chemistry to be able to take you to the next level and so that's what Maxey kind of needs to become for them. They seem to believe that he can. There's, all those rumors about how they refuse to include him in any trades for anybody down the road because they're very high on him, and they should be. I think he's an excellent player, and he's, even if they were to lose Embiid, he's the type of guy you want to keep around because he's at least a piece that you can continue to build around. But yeah, there just seems to be a clock ticking when it comes to superstar, happiness for them, that I think if they don't show Embiid a better sense of direction this season, or get a good return for Harden, find that other co-star, Maxey doesn't take that step, in a year from now, we could be looking at Philly as a team looking to sell off or start a rebuild of some sort. So, the worst place you can be in the NBA is in the middle. Philly isn't in the middle per se, like a team like the Bulls or a team like Atlanta, but they're that consistent 4 seed type. Even if they finish higher, they feel like the 4 seed. They feel like they're behind Milwaukee.
They're the team that can be the one.
Boston.
They're the team that can be the one, but you put them in a series with Boston or Milwaukee, and I'm not picking them.
And you're not picking them. And even a series against, every year there's that one random team that looks like Miami, as 2 of the past 4 years has been that squad where even in a series against them, you're not really feeling it. So they've kind of consistently been that 4th tier, and eventually you can't be that for 4 or 5 years. You need to eventually prove that you can be more than that, or a front office is going to kind of decide to take the step back. So, yeah, I think that's a team that I'll definitely have my eye on all season, and I wouldn't be surprised if things are getting rocky if around the deadline if things aren't going too well. You got a next team here?
Yeah, I think probably, so we don't go through the entire Eastern Conference, I'll just give you one more answer here, and I got the odds open.
Yeah. We don't need to because there's a lot of teams and stuff to prove.
I think you said it. We could probably list the entire Eastern Conference and make maybe outside of the bottom couple, like why they are the right answer. And I don't think we could form arguments for just about every one of these, probably outside of the Orlando Magic, because they're young and upcoming and fun. But
I think the context of this offseason is the reason we're doing it. You got to you factor in what they did this offseason, factor in what we're hearing. That's the weird thing from Embiid, the Bulls moves, that kind of thing. So you can make a case for everybody, but we're just kind of we'll rank our top 4 or 5 here. So we have, Bulls, we have Philly, and who you got next?
I'm going Boston. I know they're the favorites, but they let go of Marcus Smart, who I know is a really polarizing figure in Boston, but he's been a big time piece for those teams that have kind of made runs. But for as often as they're considered to be a favorite and seem to be the favorite, they just kind of can't really seem to get over the hump. They keep losing to the teams that they're more talented than, but probably they are inferior in terms of experience and kind of been there before. Miami, they were the much better basketball team, but Jimmy Butler was just kind of wanted it more, and they had a role players, the Heat culture, whatever you want to call it, that hit bigger shots than they did down the stretch. Take them to Golden State, that Golden State team wasn't more talented than the Boston Celtics they beat. They were just a team that had been playing together for a while, that had been in that moment. It's now been 2 years in a row that Boston has played together and been in that moment. This year they kind of took a step back, even losing to the Heat in the Eastern Conference. Did they go to 7 with Golden State? No, Golden State won in 6, I believe.
I think it was.
I believe they won in. It was in Boston, and I think the series started. But whatever. They got to that series and gave Golden State a good run, and they were the better team for a lot of that series. Miami, they take a step back. They make a big-ish move this offseason, going to get Porzingis and moving on from Marcus Smart. That's their big time guy who's going to hit the big threes for him in the offseason or in the playoffs. That's got to be that guy. I'm just, for all of hearing how, Boston's the best in the East and, they're the team to beat, they got to go out and actually do it now, because it's been this conversation for 3, 4, 5 years now. And Tatum and Jaylen Brown aren't, not so much Jason Tatum, I should say, because he has been really good. And I know it was his knee he tweaked early on in Game 7, and I felt bad for him there. But still, that he kind of blew him out towards the end.
Yeah, but in the finals, he's kind of stunk against the Warriors.
Tatum and Brown need to go be those guys as often as we're hearing that they are those guys. We've seen more flashes from Tatum. I mean, he's been an MVP conversation, but those two need to go be a dynamic duo, a superstar duo that I keep getting told that they are. And I'm not saying they can't be, but still kind of haven't seen it when it matters the most. So that I need Boston I know they've gotten far. They've been to the conference finals. They've been to the NBA finals. They got to go win something, because getting that far only counts for so long.
Right. And I do think,
can they win?
I would probably push back a little and just, and they might not be one.
You're the bigger basketball guy anyway.
No,
so you want to push back, but I want to get a little hot takey, because
I'm going to
I could have gone the Raptors. I could have gone other, I want to get a little hot takey. Like, I'm going to be Skip Bayless here. They need to do it. They haven't shown me
this is
anything.
why I'm pushing. This is why I'm pushing back. This is a new show. We'll push back a little bit. I'm gonna tell you why I think that it's a fine pick and why I don't fully 100% agree with it. But the reason that I do understand the pick is because of the fact that, like you said, the expectations are so high for this group that they eventually just need to reach those expectations. The expectations are that this group can win an NBA Finals, and the one time we've seen them in it now against a more experienced team like the Warriors, they really, really struggled in a lot of ways. It was 6 games. Tatum didn't step up. Brown, honestly, Jaylen Brown was kind of the better overall player in that series, if I remember correctly. But you're right. This is a group that's talked about consistently as one of the best teams in the league. They were the favorites coming into last year. I believe they're the favorites again right now. But you got to have
the Eastern Conference favorite right now.
Yeah. So you have to eventually be able to just prove that you can reach the expectations that people set for you. And Boston, I at least admire them a little bit for shaking it up after this past season, getting Porzingis. He's kind of that third star for them that maybe they needed. The Smart thing is definitely a big loss for them, just because defense has been one of their staples the past couple of years. And it's not like they're not going to be a good defensive team. They'll be fine, but they're going to be a very different defensive team with Porzingis in there. And also, Porzingis is somebody that he's going to have to get his as well. And it's going to be an interesting fit. So, and that's why another reason that I do think I push back a little is because they made some changes. Now they have a couple of years with Porzingis, I think, to prove, okay, what can he bring to the table? Brown and Tatum don't seem to be going anywhere. It looks like they're going to supermax Brown. So, and they're both still very, very young. And they're both in their mid-20s. They haven't even fully entered their prime yet. So I believe Brown is 26, 27. So he might be just entering what many consider to be the prime years of your career. Yeah, he's 26 years old. Tatum is 25 years old, 24 years old, 25. Yeah. So, these guys have a couple more years in them, I think, to prove that they can get the championship or become, a consistent, win a couple championships. So it's just, for me, I think there's a little bit more time there, but you're not wrong to bring up, hey, these expectations for the past 3 years have been sky high.
Been there. And part of it is they're playing for the Boston Celtics and not the Atlanta Hawks or the Indiana Pacers. Right. But that's the pressure that comes with it. Like you even just said, they have their third star now. So their third, whatever, I don't know if you want to call Porzingis a star anymore, but they have a guy who can be a star at times. Now they have to go out and they have to do it.
Yeah. And they have to prove that the changes they made were worth it, because a case could also be made, hey, why didn't you just keep it the same? You were in the championship literally 2 seasons ago. Maybe, you got to the Eastern Conference Finals again. Was the change worth it? Because you could have just stayed with the same team. So now it's like, if they lose in the first round, that does look pretty bad, because
that's a problem.
You made a big change with your team. So, it's not a bad pick. Don't worry. I think I'm just pushing back. All right. Last team that I'll go with for now is, I was going to go with Miami, but I think I'm going to leave Miami out of it, just because if they get Lillard,
they're incomplete right now. Miami's hard to judge because they're probably going to end up with Lillard, but we don't know that they have Lillard yet. We don't know who they're giving up. Don't have their odds up.
I think most sports. I think maybe I don't know. Maybe DraftKings or FanDuel finally put it up the other day, but I think DraftKings at first did not have one up for Miami because of the Lillard situation.
Miami is now plus 400 to win the East on DraftKings. That puts them just behind Boston at plus 215 and Milwaukee at plus 320.
But did they have over/under win totals up? I don't think they did.
They do not have win totals up. They have for some of them.
For some, but I don't think they did for Miami. I'll leave Miami out of it, just because, they're incomplete. I don't want to say stuff right now. And then
after a quick scroll, I'm not seeing Miami's win total up on DraftKings at the moment.
Right. So I think, I don't want to talk about it now, and then tomorrow they end up trading for Lillard and everything that people.
Oh wait, no, it's 48.5. Excuse me. After a closer scroll.
Oh, okay, they did that. All right. So I wrote a post the other late last week on over/unders, and they weren't listed. So but I think they recently added since then. So, 48.5 is high. They won 44 this year. So, that's assuming that they definitely play better. But okay, throwing Miami aside, because we'll probably have to talk about them more later on. I'll probably say Atlanta, just because that's a team that has been, rocky. You can kind of make a case like I did for Boston that they still have a relatively young core. So maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe they don't have that much to prove, but they've gone through 3 head coaches in the past couple of years with Trae Young. Quinn Snyder is a very highly respected head coach. He's supposed to help stabilize things. Trae Young, the rumors have been all over the place the past year with, the front office apparently. Oh yeah, their front office has also overgone a big overhaul, at least internally. Like Landry Fields kind of took over things midway through last season. And there's just been a lot of shuffling of pieces with inside that organization. And also the Trae Young rumors have been all over the place in terms of the front office apparently has freedom to trade him if they wanted to. And he's been unhappy at times. There's been times when he where he didn't even show up to a game. I don't remember if that was last year or this year, but they finished 500 this year. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals 3 years ago. Everyone thought, oh, here comes Trae Young. Here comes the Atlanta Hawks. They're super young. They're going to be, frisky for the next handful of years. And the past 2 years since then, it's been very, very underwhelming. And a lot of it has been because of Trae Young, just because he's seemingly been – it's tough because he should be a player that you think is fantastic to play with. And everybody loves to play with him because he is a very gifted playmaker and a very gifted passer. But it seems like he's not the great locker room guy. It doesn't seem like he's the leader that people want him to be. He's obviously a very poor defender. So it's hard to know as a teammate. And when you're building a team around a smaller guard, it's just hard to know if he's the right guy for them. And if a change of scenery is going to be needed eventually. Same thing with DeJounte Murray, who they extended. They traded 4 first-round picks, if I remember correctly, for DeJounte Murray. That's not, he's very good. I like him a lot. I would love if he was on the Bulls. I think he's a great point guard.
I don't think he's four first round.
I don't think he's worth four first round picks. I don't think Atlanta would do the deal again for that same amount right now. And so he's got that duo of him and Trae Young made sense a little bit from the standpoint of, DeJounte Murray, all NBA caliber defender, potentially can guard multiple positions. Trae Young, he can't guard a traffic cone. I was about to say a banana because I'm looking at a banana right now. But he can't. Yeah, he can't guard anything. So at least putting a better defender next to him in the backcourt made a lot of sense. However, they both kind of need the ball in their hands to be the most effective. This season definitely didn't. The idea was, maybe Trae's going to be this Steph-like off-ball mover and catch and shoot shot maker, but that's a lot to ask. And he's used to having the ball in his hands and creating on his own and taking some ill-advised shots. So it hasn't been the best duo so far. And then, they have a lot of other young talent that I like. DeAndre Hunter just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Onyeka Okongwu, AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson. So again, that could be the case to be made as, hey, they got some time here still because they're so young. But in terms of being what people think they can be from 3 years ago and proving that we can build around Trae Young and proving that the trade for DeJounte Murray for 4 first-round picks made sense, you got to start being above 500. You got to get out of the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
And
you need to be a 6 or above.
And because of all the rumors that we've heard, because of all the front office, changes, because of all the coaching stuff, one more season in that play-in tournament range could easily be okay, we're going to wipe the slate clean. We're going to start over with some of our young guys and Quinn Snyder, who I'm assuming probably has a lot of say within the organization. If he says, I don't like Trae Young, then Trae Young's probably going to be out of there. It just feels like a team that definitely could find themselves in a more dire situation when it comes to their long-term future next summer. So
yeah, we talked about the Sixers, and you said how Embiid is probably the most movable superstar, and then after that, I think we mentioned Doncic. Trae Young is right up there too because.
Well, Trae Young, I would say even more than Luka.
Probably more than Doncic, because they're kind of married to that. Unless Doncic really wanted out, they're kind of married to that Doncic-Kyrie combination for a couple.
And
Trae
Young, maybe even more than Embiid. It's just I consider Embiid and Doncic obviously better players than Trae Young.
Oh yeah, but Trae,
you're right.
He's of that ilk that kind of he'd be a massive story if he got moved. That's a guy that could be on the move here in a year or so. If this just kind of flames out again, they start recouping some of those first-round picks.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so to wrap up, we had Philly. We had Chicago, we had Atlanta,
and Boston.
And I think those are good. They're all different parts of the standings, but
it's different types of prove it too. Atlanta, Chicago, kind of same thing, but also not, because Atlanta's more like, we went out and made this really bold move and we have a disgruntled star. Can that work? The Bulls are just, we're running it back. Philly
Yeah,
is, who knows what the hell's going on there? Is anybody even happy here? And Boston is, all right, it's about time you actually start winning now and stop just getting there. We need you to get over that hump. So I think it's all 4 different levels of needing to start proving yourself.
Right. And I do think that I wouldn't be necessarily shocked if, a team or somebody like someone wanted to say, oh, what about Milwaukee or what about,
not there with Milwaukee yet, but they're,
because they have Giannis,
they're
so
close.
I'm just not there. Yeah. What about, I guess you can make a case for Toronto as well. I just think the reason I don't think of Toronto right away is because I think they have enough assets to move to they don't really need to prove anything in my opinion, because I'm like, they're running it back. I think that's dumb. But then if they wanted to blow it up, then they have
they can still blow it up at the deadline. Yeah.
And they could blow it up very effectively, and they can get lots of picks, and I think they can get good players. They
haven't made their decision yet. This offseason they've decided to run it back, but that hasn't necessarily handcuffed them to future, decisions moves.
Right. And then most of the other teams in the bottom tier are rebuilding, and I don't think none of them need to take massive steps this season or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that pretty much wraps things up. I mean,
we're good.
I think the conclusion, I'll just say that my first basketball game with the new league, unfortunately, it was a loss. I can't say that I led my team to victory. However, I did. You brought it up. I did. I wanted to assert myself early. These are people I've never played with before. We're going to be playing, a couple months together. I wanted to show that I could do a little something. So first possession of the game, first points of the game, pulled up behind the arc, top of the key, swooshed it through, confident jog back, got some high fives from the teammates, and we were grooving. We were first half, the 20-minute half. So first half, pretty good stuff all around. Second half, all of us got tired pretty quick, and the other team ended up kind of coming and taking us in that second half. So it was a good first game overall. I look forward to recapping how things go. But I'm a shooter. Anyone who's listening, you need to know that's how
that's the way to be in a men's league and a pickup league. Like when I was playing grade school basketball, I feel like my basketball career, I started in the post and I've just backed out and backed out and backed out. The last competitive basketball I think I played was intramurals in college, and I was an offensive lineman at a D3 school at Illinois Wesleyan, and we had a intramural team of all the offensive linemen. I was by far the smallest dude. So it's like, you're small, play point guard. So I kind of just kept backing out, brought it up, and I do the same thing, just kind of float around, hover around, pass, shoot a three, but I can't do the pickup basketball anymore. I think golf is just about the extent of my competitive sports. I just, the knees get hurt, the ankles hurt, the shoulder starts to hurt. It's too much for me.
Well, it wasn't.
More power to you for doing it. I can't. It's too much.
Well, it's my first organized basketball since. In college I played, pickup all the time. But first time doing a league with refs. There's refs, there's a shot clock, there's everything. So first time doing a league like that in a long time. And I didn't come away unscathed the first game. I definitely felt better than I was scared. I'd wake up the next day and my fiance would have to call an ambulance. But I was fortunately, I just woke up with a very swollen ring finger. I guess I jammed it during the game. We're okay now, though. It's already loosened back up. But I definitely thought that things were going to get really ugly after that first game. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I'll keep everybody. I'm sure people are just dying to know though how it goes. I'll keep my box.
Do yourself a favor if you don't have one yet. I'm not sure of your refrigerator freezer situation. Invest in an automatic ice maker. A lot easier to ice the knees and stuff. If you have those cubes, just churn it out so you don't have to be refilling ice trays all the time.
We got one.
Good.
We also have a ton of ice
packs.
I used the ice pack on my ring finger. I got home, put it on that baby immediately. So I am pretty prepared with all that. I'm expecting more pain to come, but I'm expecting more shots also to fall.
No. I'm a Bulls fan, so I'm also expecting more pain to come. Sorry, I was depressing way to end this thing.
We're not supposed to end sad. All right, well, thank you everybody. Those who have listened, again, we'll be back next week. We'll probably do. We'll talk a little bit about the West teams that have
Western Conference. Prove it. I like the prove it topic. Let's go Western Conference.
So we'll go Western Conference. And then we'll also run through some of the news that happens over the next week, if there is any at all. But other than that, thanks everybody. Have a good week.